Hello and welcome to Focus here on France 24. Now, it was one of the worst massacres in the history of Azerbaijan. In just one night, its government says, 613 Azeri citizens, including 63 children and 106 women, were killed by Armenian armed soldiers. That was 20 years ago this weekend, and just one of the many catastrophic consequences of the war waged between Armenia and Azerbaijan over land along their border. That was kick-started by the collapse of the Soviet Union in 1991. Tens of thousands of people were killed and hundreds of thousands more fled their homes before a tenuous ceasefire was agreed in 1994. But although 2 decades have passed, memories run deep, and there are growing fears now that the conflict could start up once again, as our correspondents in Azerbaijan have been finding out.
It was a snowy night when Armenian soldiers attacked Matanat's hometown of Xocalı. She fled with her family into the forest nearby, and it's there her husband and her 8-year-old daughter were shot dead. Matanat's sister-in-law also lost her husband. She was carrying her son on her back. He was shot as she tried to escape. Only the daughter she was pregnant with at the time survived. It's a nightmare this family relives every day.
Even now, after 20 years, we remember it like it was yesterday. We can't ever forget. In just one day, I lost my whole family.
Anar was 10 years old when he escaped the massacre. He's come to lay flowers at this monument, which commemorates the friends, family and classmates he lost. Today, he's unable to return to his home, which is now under Armenian control.
We have lost everything, our relatives, homes, life, And today, all people of Xocalı, they have just one dream, which we are planning to become true, and we are enthusiastic about this dream, just to get back to those lands.
1 million people fled their homes during the war between Armenia and Azerbaijan, and today many are still living as displaced people. For the past 20 years, this family of 8 has been living in one small room, sharing a toilet and kitchen with 21 other families. Some of them say they are ready to fight with Armenia to get their homes back, an attitude the government seems to share.
If Armenia doesn't understand our position, what can we do? Our only option is to free our territories, even if that means using military force. We have the right to liberate our land.
But there are fears that such fighting talk from both the Armenian and Azeri governments increases the risk of war.
There's firing continuously up and down those front lines. There's no diplomatic relations. The peace process is stalled. And it stands to reason when you have 2 governments which are engaging in hostile rhetoric and are arming themselves every single day more and more, that there's a danger of these small conflicts spilling out of control and turning into a large conflict.
Those who lost their homes 20 years ago are still suffering from the effects of war. But with more sophisticated arms on both sides, a return to fighting today would have even more devastating consequences for the next generation.
Well, I'm joined now from Georgia by our correspondent Marcus Mayer, who helped compile that report. Marcus, thanks for being with us. First of all, then, how justified are those fears that this frozen conflict could erupt into war once again?
Well, the situation between Armenia and Azerbaijan is getting more and more tense, and that's because both countries claim ownership of border territories called Nagorno-Karabakh. Now Armenia controls them since the war, and Azerbaijan wants them back. So now both governments have been engaging in increasingly bellicose rhetoric. But not only that, Azerbaijan has also increased its military spending tenfold over the last few years, thanks to oil and gas revenues. And that means that its military budget is now bigger than Armenia's entire government spending. So that means that Armenia might now be tempted to provoke a conflict before Azerbaijan gets too strong militarily. Also, there's shooting at the front lines quite often, and several times a year, people die there as a result. So the fear is really that one of these conflicts or one of these incidents might degenerate into a full-blown war again.
So clearly a lot of saber rattling and a lot of tension, but is there any appetite for war among the people, considering that many of them went through so much last time?
Well, it varies really. Many people say that they've seen the consequences of war and they certainly don't want any more of it. But the refugees who've been living in the dismal conditions we've just seen in the report for the last 20 years have had enough and they really want to go home now. Some of them even told us that they'd prefer to die fighting the Armenians rather than just go on living like this. And it's really hard to see how a compromise can be reached here because Armenia refuses to give up control over the land it now controls, and Azerbaijan is adamant that it should get it back. Also, some people suspect that both governments are demonizing each other and keeping animosity alive in order to deflect from their own domestic problems, and an enemy can be a useful scapegoat.
So let's say that spark does ignite and a war does spring up again between Azerbaijan and Armenia. What would be the consequences of that for the region?
Well, the problem really is that powerful regional allies might be pulled in. So, for instance, Russia is a military ally of Armenia, and Russia could therefore be pulled into a conflict. And on the other side, Turkey, which is a NATO member, has very strong links with Azerbaijan, and it doesn't get along with Armenia at all. So the prospect of a war involving on one side Russia and on the other side a NATO member is very worrying. Also, it's if we look at what happened last time around, in the war in the 90s, tens of thousands of people died and almost 1 million people became refugees. But any conflict now might be much worse, have much bigger consequences because both sides are much more heavily armed now, and the humanitarian cost of a renewed conflict could be huge.
So given those high stakes, briefly, what's the international community doing to resolve the problem?
Well, Russia, France and the United States are regularly holding or chairing peace talks between Armenia and Azerbaijan, but so far nothing's come out of them. And now these peace talks or the negotiations are complicated even further by a French law criminalizing the denial of the Armenian genocide.
Okay.
Azerbaijan now maintains that France is pro-Armenian and should not be involved in these negotiations.
Okay, thanks very much indeed, Marcus Mayer in Tbilisi, for joining us. That's it from us for now. Thanks for watching, and do stay tuned to France 24.